You're going to love this. Trust me, what you're seeing now is my normal state. This is a Super Saiyan. And this is what is known as a Super Saiyan that has ascended past a Super Saiyan. Or you could just call this a Super Saiyan 2. And this is to go even further beyond!
Hello humans, and welcome back to another video. So how about that Fallen banner, huh? We got an interesting Edelgard, but the rest of them, kinda like I said in the last video, not too great. And I'm not really convinced that Edelgard is too great either, so I am going to attempt to showcase her in this video and point out what is good and what is not so good, what is consistent, what is not so consistent. And like always, we're going to have some Ether Raids content at the very end to show her off. So I did say I was not pulling on the banner, and I didn't really lie. Technically, I used the 5 tickets, and I pulled the rest of the colorless orbs that came with the tickets, because what can I say? I like Edelgard, and she kinda just wanted to come finish off the collection that I started with the plus 10 of her original form whenever she initially came out. So here we are, I find myself with a plus res minus HP Fallen Edelgard, which is fantastic. And let's take a look at this unit's kit. So like I said, there are some good things and some not so good things. So Fallen Edelgard's gimmick seems to be that she is a beast armored unit. And like beast armored unit, she has, well, I guess all beast units, she has skills that are conditional to her being transformed. However, I believe for the first time, we're actually seeing a lot of transformational locked skills, and I'm not sure if we've ever gotten a unique A, B, or C slot for a beast unit that also has conditional skills based on transformation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spare you reading out the entire laundry list of effects that this unit has in her skills, and I'm just gonna break it down for you. So let's start with the weapon. For the weapon, she has 3 skills that are unconditional, so no matter if she is transformed or untransformed, she will be getting the slaying effect, which is -1 to cooldown. She will be inflicting attack and defense -6 on the opponent in combat, which is a very powerful effect that we've seen before. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because it really hurts her, she also is getting Wary Fighter. Fallen Edelgard is really slow, and the fact that she is a beast unit means that she has no weapon inheritance options whatsoever. Also, the fact that she gets Wary Fighter means she is absolutely never doubling anyone ever, under any circumstances. And I'll go over why this is a little bit hurtful for her later on when I discuss a little bit of the strategy, but Wary Fighter is really not doing her any favors here, especially when someone like Brave Hector prevents follow-ups and he doesn't have that lock on his weapon. Now in terms of this weapon, it also can go a little bit further beyond. When she is transformed, it gives her an extra action as long as she attacks. So that's kind of like a mini Galeforce effect. Well, I don't, it's not really a mini Galeforce, it is Galeforce. And like we've seen with armored beast units, basically just Kanegus up until this point, she also gets distant counter when she's transformed, which is really cool because distant counter on a weapon with all of these effects is kinda nuts. Sorry DC Refines, you all were terrible. But again, being locked behind transformation kinda hinders this, and we'll get into why this is later on. Now let's take a look at what makes her kind of unique, and that's her B skill. So unconditionally, when she's not transformed, she is getting Special Fighter and 7 HP after every combat for healing, which is also a double-edged sword based on the strategies she wants to run. And when she is transformed, she gets 40% damage reduction on the first attack on the first combat in either player phase or enemy phase. So this is really, really inconsistent. It's not that great, but hey, it's better than nothing, I guess. So this kind of makes it like a special fighter that is slightly better than what we're used to. Now this Edelgard has a lot of effects, and with all of these effects come multiple different roles that she can run. Unfortunately, some of these effects clash, so I have kind of split up her roles into offensive and defensive based on ether raids. You can run these in any other mode, but ether raids really lets you take full advantage of this, and this Edelgard being not locked behind a legendary or a mythic can be blessed for whatever season you want. I'm going to focus on 2 different seasons because I think her AR defense applications are actually quite limited. However, if you can figure out how to make her work, it's not outside the realm of possibility. In terms of her offense utility, I think what jumps out to most people immediately is her Galeforce carry utility. Her having a slaying effect, her having special fighter, her having a mini Galeforce in her weapon, and wary fighter preventing her from doing follow-ups, it just kind of speaks itself into existence here. Unfortunately, in order for her to fulfill this role at her maximum, she needs to be run in a composition that lets her transform, and preferably on turn 1. A lot of the problems that Galeforce teams run into in terms of consistency are sort of ranged cav lines, where that entire second row in front of your team is full of structures that you have to waste a turn breaking. And you can't really afford to do that with a Galeforce team if your only option to avoid turn 1 instant start teams is to Galeforce them on turn 1. So this kind of hinders her, but if you can make a team be crafted around her, here's what I would do. On light season, her no-brainer partner is Milla. Milla has the isolation effect, so she does both that and helps Edelgard fulfill a slot for that turn 1 transformation. Freya is also another option for her, because she also gives her attack +3, which she will need, and I'll talk about that in a second, as well as helping her transform. On Astra season, you'll be running Regan most of the time just for that extra slot and the attack +3, so that's very nice, and you will probably want to run Naga as well. Not as good as Milla, but it'll give her sort of the dragon effectiveness and help that transformation partner role. In addition to this, if you want to run some fun Galeforce partners, you can run someone like a Pirate Tibarn, who is also amazing and is also colorless and does Galeforce very well, as well as Heron Dancers or Linja. Now the problem with Galeforce teams, like I said, is turn 1 auto start teams are immensely common in Astra season, and you really have to go from turn 1. Edelgard is an armored unit, meaning 1 movement. If you are somehow able to give her Armor March or the seal that gives you the extra armored movement, I forgot what it was called because I never use it, she can be really good. You know, she'll have that 2 movement and maybe you'll be able to work this out. I personally am not very good at Galeforcing. I am of the tank and spank belief church over here, so I am more inclined to run Edelgard the way I'm going to suggest next. But if you are one of those Galeforce gurus out there and you can figure out really how to make her work, let me know in the comments. Maybe, show me how the strategies work against the turn 1 auto start team, because I think it would be very interesting and she is very strong. But the fact that she is very transformation restricted, as well as the fact that her attack is actually not very high, is somewhat concerning. Now, you guys are probably looking at me like I'm crazy. 42 base attack, 46 with the super boon, I believe, in attack, as well as a 16 might weapon when she's transformed, 62 attack, that's low? It is. And the matter of the fact is it's low because Edelgard is not allowed to double. Her B slot for Galeforce teams really isn't doing you any favors. If she did not have Wary Fighter and she was allowed to run something like a Bold Fighter instead, this would make her de facto one of the best Galeforcers in the game. But because she can't double, and the fact that Ether Raid's defense tends to have a lot of units who have 2 or more mythic boosts, meaning that they have an extra 10 HP and a possible 5 defense in terms of bulk, I think you might be overestimating how high a 62 or a 65 attack is. I struggled to kill a plus defense unmerged Bramimond because of lull attack res with this Edelgard. Mid 60s attack might be high if you're doubling, but if you're not doubling, she's just wasting that auto Galeforce on her weapon for another action to kill the same unit. With her lack of mobility, it's really hard to justify running her over someone like a Baby Tana, who is on banner right now, has amazing mobility and very high speed and attack and also pretty good bulk. So why would I run Fallen Edelgard here over a hyper offense unit that can move like 4 spaces in one turn if I really wanted to? So I don't know, she works. I'm not very convinced she's great. If you want to run her in sort of a hybrid offensive and tanking hybrid role where she does make use of Galeforce and she takes a couple hits, that can work too. I'm more inclined to run her full defensive where she will make use of the auto Galeforce that is on her weapon, but she doesn't have to waste the special slot for something like a Galeforce. She can use a healing special, and maybe she won't have to waste the seal slot for something that'll help her Galeforce like more attack. An option you could also do is you could give her Wings of Mercy in the B slot as well as the Heavy Blade Seal in the seal slot, but that's a little bit going out of the way to make her really work when you could just give that Heavy Blade Seal to someone like Baby Tana, for example. Again, I think she's completely suboptimal for Galeforce, and again, I'm probably wrong because I don't use Galeforce very much. Let me know what you think. The second role that I think she completely excels at and probably eclipses any tank we have in the game right now is running her defensively. And by defensively, I don't mean on AR defense, I mean on AR offense as a save tank, for example. Now, right now, sort of the premier save tank that we have in AR offense is Brave Hector, and as someone who does run, as you guys very well know, a far save +10 summoner supported Brave Hector on offense, this is a bit of a mixed bag for me to talk about. The reason this video's late is because I've been recording and re-recording this section, flip-flopping between who is actually the better tank on AR offense, Brave Edelgard or Brave Hector. The thing is, she has like 12 BST more than Brave Hector, and most of that is allocated in stats that actually matter for a tank. It's not in speed, and it's more focused in a little bit more attack, and a lot more defense and resistance. To give you guys the full perspective, an Edelgard without a boon in defense or a boon in res has more base defense and res than Brave Hector has at +10 and at max Dragon Flowers. So a unmerged, neutral Brave Edelgard takes less damage than anything that can be thrown at Brave Hector. Now with this comes drawbacks. Remember how I said she was going to be limited because of her restrictions? That wary fighter rears its ugly head again here in the fact that she cannot double. So unless you are one-shotting things with your special, she is just going to hamper your progress offensively and you might find yourself swarmed by your enemy. This is where Brave Hector is really way better than she is because he doubles because of his weapon, and he's also armor immune because of his weapon. He also does the attack defense -6 because of his weapon, and he prevents follow-ups because of his weapon. His weapon is way better than what Edelgard's is, even if she has DC, because you might have to waste that A slot for a null armor effectiveness. Now, if you're running her, which is what I recommend, in a save comp with someone with a near save, you actually get to run that A slot as distant defense 4. And this is what really makes her way tankier than Hector, because not only are you negating your opponent's stats completely around like any visible boosts, and I'll tell you in a little bit why this is important later, but you're also able to inflict that raw attack defense -6. And that's huge in letting her hit harder and take a lot less damage. In addition to that, you can actually just run distant defense in the seal slot as well for an extra 14 defense and res. Now, I don't know what IV is best for her. I kind of tend to go with plus res if you're going to run her with a far save, just to get her to that 45, 44 defenses with the extra 14 from the distance combined. That's almost 60 and 60 if you add in her flowers, without buffs, without factoring the save stuff. Nothing like that. Now, she doesn't negate penalties, so that's a little drawback. You are going to have a Shrine Soaker for her, and you will want to run her with Dagger, which is probably a no-brainer for that 6 slot if you have her, and she gives +5 res, so that is perfect. And potentially a Milla, both to help her transform and to give her that 5 extra defense. So those as your 2 mythics, and you're golden. Outside of that, I mean, you could run her with someone like a Halloween Dickensia, who I don't know when he's coming back, but he would be a great near save option and help her transform excellently. Otherwise, you could probably just run Kanegas for near save or any other armored dragon, really. It's up to you. You could also run Gustav as he is. I still think he's probably the best near saver, but he needs to be careful about his positioning and make sure he's one space away just to let Edelgard stay transformed for that DC. Also of note, she makes Poison Strike a lot less effective because of her B-slot. The fact that she heals 7 damage back means that you're only taking 13 damage instead of the 20 from something like a Fire Sweep double Poison Strike ranged Cav. And that difference is far more pronounced when you consider that these Cavs tend to be danced and go another round, meaning that she actually takes 26 damage only versus the 40, which means that she's still in most of her thresholds. So that's a huge swing for her, and her B-slot really plays very well defensively. However, the only problem is the fact that she doesn't double, and I said I was going to talk about this a little later. Fallen Edelgard struggles to kill things like Duo Leaf, even with the bonfire, even with the defense being upwards of like a 65 or a 66. Against a Duo Leaf that has a decent amount of extra HP, she will miss bonfire kills unmerged, or if not plus attack or not in combat buffed enough. And again, this is because of how common something like a lull attack res is. She'll survive, don't get me wrong, she might actually take no damage from him, and the fact that he doesn't double is like, whatever, I don't care. So if you want to kind of play the tank and spank method where you tank and you have a bunch of nukers behind her, that's perfectly fine, but just be aware of the fact that she will be missing kills against any enemy with decent bulk and a lull B slot. So those are really the main drawbacks of Fallen Edelgard. A lot of it is her inconsistency to kill either on offense or on defense, and Wary Fighter is probably one of the main problems with that, or one of the main reasons for that, if I should say. Now let's take a look at a couple of these matches that I recorded in Aether Raids. I did them against the same team because this is a Cav line that kind of has a turn 1 pressure. So I wanted to showcase her being used against this defense as best as possible. Okay, so you can see this one is a pretty standard Cav line. The main thing here is there is a plus 10 legendary Lilina, a Bramimond, and a plus 10 Reinhardt, and a pesky Summer Mia. Summer Mia is really annoying because she takes a lot of reduced damage. And then there's also the traditional Veronica. So this first team was my attempt at Galeforcing. As you can see, I've got 4 Mythics here, as well as Edelgard and a Racing. And what I'm going to do basically here is I wanted to attempt to... Actually, sorry, this isn't the Galeforce comp. This is actually her tanking while also being thrust pretty far into enemy range. So the main outcome here was me trying to kill the main threat, which is the legendary Lilina. And this is what Fallen Edelgard is pretty good at doing, is she can remove any squishy immediate threats off the board, and then maybe stay in to tank the rest of the team if they're not very threatening. So immediately I take out the legendary Lilina, I've got Bonfire ready, and I'm able to take out Bramimond. Now the rest of the team here kind of hides away because there's a lot less threat range to worry about, and I purposely baited Veronica down to attack Dagger. So Dagger, being in panic range, gets these insane boosts, and Veronica can't double her or be much enough damage to kill. And now Edelgard tanks everything else. Here is where we see the fact that she can't double hurting her somewhat, as Mia takes 75% reduced damage from attack. She doesn't even get close to killing her in one shot. She has no problem with the Triandra because she is squishy enough to take a lot of damage, but as you can see, this Triandra with 48 HP, if it weren't for the Bonfire proc, would be a very close kill here. Like, it would be very difficult to finish off. Now, the one thing I like with this combined approach is here I don't double Reinhardt because of Wary Fighter, but because of my inherent Galeforce, I'm able to actually go again and guarantee the kill, while my other units down there make sure that Veronica dies and Edelgard is sort of up there alone with the Mia. One of the nice things about the Wary Fighter in this scenario are, however, because Mia takes so much reduced damage, this worked out in my favor, where I won't one-shot her, so it's giving me a little bit of extra time to go and collect the Aether Pots. So you'll see that in a moment here, where my units kind of are finishing off the Veronica, and we'll sort of start making our way downtown, walk a little bit fast, try to get those Aether Pots. And Edelgard will once again, with a Bonfire, try and fail at killing the Summer Mia. So it really is a double-edged sword. Sometimes her doing too much damage with that Bonfire and failing to, and killing a unit might put you in a bit of a corner because she is transformed. But here it really did me actually a favor. So it does work, and again, I want to let you guys know that these are cherry-picked scenarios to show off certain things. you're not obviously guaranteed setups that are this easy to abuse in Ether Raids. Unfortunately, I would have showed off the Omega tanking build for Edelgard, but I am not willing, nor do I actually have the Farsafe fodder to give her right now. Otherwise, I actually probably would. If I had an extra Henriette, Fallen Edelgard would actually be quite a no-brainer to do here, because she's already way tankier than Brave Hector, and I can just have her as a Farsafe tank and not have to switch over my Brave Hector from every season. So she would be a very good candidate, but I don't have the Farsafe fodder, so I can't show that off. You're just going to have to take my word for it here. And here you can see me finishing off the Summer Mia. So, not a big deal, pretty good showing for her, and let's move on to the next segment, which is the far more exciting Galeforce team. Alright, so like before, same enemy team composition, slightly altered on my end. Here I'm actually only running 3 mythics this time in order to actually get some more Galeforce-y effects here. I decided to run Linja on this team, because I did say that it was good, but also because there's an opening for her to break in through those structures in the beginning, which is really important. If someone had been running something like a Spring Breeze, for example, this method would be impossible. So here I start off by smiting Edelgard in, and she really needs that because her mobility is so low, and like the last battle, she'll be able to immediately nuke the Lilina, get her mini Galeforce off, nuke Bramimond, which actually is impossible without Deathblow in the seal slot, so I had to go back and fix that because of his lull. Even with a low HP amount, she wasn't doing very much. And then after that, I decided to sort of corner in the Triandra and kill Veronica. Hopefully this displays that you taking out 3 units with Edelgard and then 1 with Lyn, which is the duo unit, means that you should be able to avoid an active duo's hindrance and activate Linja's effect, and then hopefully nuke the last unit. Here, I noticed that the turn would auto-end unless I turned off the animation real quick or turned off the smart end, so I quickly did that, and now we resume to take out the Mia, which is really no problem for even a neutral. This is my free Linja, I never had one before, so the free one can easily take care of the Mia. And then she uses her duo skill to take care of Reinhardt. So after that, it's pretty much just a wrap and about pot cleanup because the Triandra is trapped. It's really very simple. If you aren't able to trap someone, I'm sure you're able to somehow do that. If you're running a Galeforce team, I'm sure there's ways to optimize this. But in a vacuum, this is the easiest way I could do it. Like I said before, if you are running into someone with a full front row of structures, like running a Spring Breeze map where you have to break this, and a turn 1 auto start team, this is really sort of the bane of a Galeforce team like this, and I think probably the bane of any Galeforce team really. So if there's any Galeforcers, again, let me know what prevents your teams in the comments below. And that's pretty much all I got for this Ether Raids showcase segment. So sort of just some general remaining thoughts. I'm not saying that this Edelgard is a bad unit, on the contrary, I think she is the best tank in the game, albeit she does struggle on KOs unless her attack is high enough. It might actually prove optimal to run plus attack, I don't know, and running mythics that give extra attack, like a Regan, like a Freya for example, or an Altina. Those might help her get certain key KOs on enemies, and I don't know. Yeah, I think Bonfire is still probably the optimal special, although I could be wrong on that. But I find that Brave Hector is probably a more consistent tank, although Edelgard takes far less damage and is colorless, meaning that she avoids the weapon triangle. Null follow-up is also her weakness because it avoids that second hit being 40% mitigated, so she can get nuked. Just guys be wary of that. Otherwise, I think she's a great unit. Overall, she'll help anyone, even unmerged. She really doesn't need merges to be great, so if you want to spark, I think she's probably the best unit to spark for on this banner, unless you, for some reason, have an unhealthy affiliation with the Little Morgans, or like Dimitri. There was some interesting little bit of Dimitri drama. He was trending on Twitter for a while, so I might make a video about him in a couple days. I think I've got a few things to say that might be a little bit interesting and ruffle some feathers, so maybe stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I don't want to keep any of you waiting any longer. If you haven't seen my legendary Sigurd showcase, feel free to check that out. And I'll see you guys in the next video very soon. Peace.